Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of Can It Take a K26, the show where we take a variety of blasters and see if they can be upgraded using a K26 spring. I am your host, Captain Xavier, and today we're going to go over the large blasters from Nerf's Mega line. Let's take a look at our contestants. Our first contestant is the Nerf Mega Roto Fury. The Roto Fury was originally released in 2015 as part of the Mega line, obviously. It is direct plunger, front pump action, and has a 10-round cylinder. It does have a top rail, of course. Other than that, not a whole lot to say, but let's find out if it can take a K26. Okay, well, I'm actually kind of surprised. I had figured that the pump mechanism went above, but it actually goes through the middle of the cylinder. And it is geared, which is probably not in our favor. The catch mechanism is a little bit different. It uses a torsion spring, which hopefully it's strong enough, because upgrading things that require torsion springs is tricky business. But let's take a look and see what we've got as far as plunger head. Pay no attention to the random parts that I picked up off the floor. Alright, well, K26 fits. Now we see if after we put it all together, I've got it back together correctly, and if it will, in fact, prime. Well, that's a yes for the Roto Fury. I'm pleasantly surprised. I was not expecting it to be able to work, but the spring I put in it is definitely shorter. I put in the minimum amount of spring I could put in without spring rattle, and it catches just fine, primes just fine, doesn't feel like it's so much heavier that it's going to tear the gears up. The gears are really beefy. So I'm going to call this one a yes, and I'm happy about that. So let's move on to the next contestant. Our next contestant is the Mega Double Breach. The Mega Double Breach was originally released in 2016 as part of the Mega sub-series of the Elite and Strike line, of course. It is an interesting design. As the name suggests, it has a double breach. It opens up on the side, you feed 2 Mega darts in, you then close it, and it fires 1 dart for each pump. So it is a smart AR, 2-barreled. The first couple of times I tried firing this, it fired both darts at once and did it very, very poorly. I think I just didn't have the darts in all the way, so the air restrictor wasn't engaging. But there were all sorts of suggestions. This blaster is actually on loan from me from the curator, who is here. He wanted to see if he could take a K26, so I figured I'd go ahead and film the episode. And since it's not being filmed along with the other blasters for this series, Lord knows what this is going to look like after editing. We'll probably have to have another Acme blaster representative at the end, but we'll see how that works out. But where he was pondering if there's some way for us to actually make a sealed breach with this, and I'm sure there is, but we'd have to tinker with it once we get it apart. But the first question to answer is, can it take a K26? So let's find out. Alright, so I got a call and it unfortunately killed my video, so I don't know where we left off, so we're gonna start over. So we're into it. It's got a nice big plunger tube, which is lovely. It's got a smart AR system, which means unless you can get a whole lot more power, you're not going to be able to take out the ARs. But if you could, they're unfortunately solvent welded together. But you might be able to drill them out so that you can make it fire both at once, but you'd need a lot more power, which is the whole goal here. The downside is it's got both slam fire, which makes for an inherently weaker system, and its front pump, which generally creates an inherently weaker system because you're trying to prime a spring with all of this weird linkage in here, which, as you can see, warps. So we have a section of K26. It's denser than the original. We may not get enough compression, honestly. So, don't listen to anything I say, because the double breach can take a K26. Now, that's all we've done so far. I'm getting myself one of these, by the way. I'm going to paint it in my colors because this is just fantastic. And I'm also very tempted to take out the air restrictors so that it fires both at once. Of course, at that point you have this thing, which has roughly the same functionality as my Baron pistols, but in not near so svelte a package. But things that we're probably going to do to improve it, improve the air seal, pad the plunger head for a couple of reasons. One, to keep it from shattering itself, and two, I did have to cut down the spring a little bit in order to get it to catch, and adding that plunger padding would alleviate the spring rattle. But yeah, I am very impressed that the linkage was able to take it. I am pleasantly surprised. And yeah, that's fabulous and beefy. Functionally, obviously, it's not nearly as good as any number of various options. My boss shotgun obviously has a higher ammo capacity and is much easier to reload. But this thing is just pretty. And I want one. Our final contestant is one that has been requested since pretty much the beginning, the Mega Centurion. Now, the Centurion was originally released in 2013 at the very beginning of the Mega line, and has a number of interesting features. The barrel is not removable, and the gun will not fire without modification. It does have some rail up here. It's got some rail down here. It usually came with a bipod. It takes a 6-round magazine. Unlike every other magazine-fed blaster that I know of, this one, the magazine can only be put in while the priming handle is forward. On every other blaster, you have to prime it back, put the magazine in, and then prime it forward. On this one, you have to have it forward because as you prime it back, the bolt actually closes. And then when you slide it forward, you're just resetting it. And then when you fire it, it fires, and then the bolt moves itself back, which is ridiculously over-engineered and complicated, and part of the reason that this blaster is so hard to modify. And that's kind of the reason one of the reasons I've been avoiding it. I also did not have one. Freaking bugs. I also did not have one for the longest time, and then I got a hold of one and took it apart for a project and forgot to do the K26 on it, and I got a hold of this one from Jomo, so now I can do it. But the idea of opening this thing up and dealing with all of the complicated internals wearies me. Fortunately for me, I happen to be a wizard, so hocus corpus meos, ta-da! This is the part that we're actually interested in. This is obviously the plunger tube and bolt, and unlike most guns where you would have a direct plunger where the plunger would come out the back and go forward, this is in fact reverse plunger, kind of. So as you prime the gun back, this gets moved forward, and then this releases and fires, and then the whole assembly gets slid back, which is just unnecessary. It's also all solvent welded together. So taking it apart is a pain in the butt. Fortunately, we don't have to do that, because we can just take a look at the bolt and easily compare it to a bit of K26, and there is no way that K26 is going to fit around this plunger rod, and so I'm going to go ahead and call it a no. K26 is, once again, has too small of an inside diameter to go around the reverse plunger. Now, this is a different reverse plunger than usual. Usually the spring is on the outside of the reverse plunger. In this case, it is on the inside. But in addition to not really being able to get to it easily, K26 is not going to fit around it, and so that's a no. Let's recap. All right, for those of you keeping score at home or who just skipped to the end to see the results, that was a yes for the Roto Fury. That was a yes for the Double Breach, and that was a no for the Centurion. The Roto Fury I'm really happy about. I might actually start running that at wars. I don't think our current war has any special rules for Mega. I have an idea that I think would work. I'd like to see them be shield piercing. So if you hit a shield with them, the guy is dead, but the shield isn't destroyed. Unlike rockets, where if they hit a shield, the guy is dead and the shield is destroyed for the whole round. That would make it possible for people to kill shields, but not have them be destroyed. So, just a thought. I don't know if they will go for it, but if they do, I will definitely be running this Roto Fury. I'd also love to get a double breach. It's obviously not as practical as many other options, but I just really like the look of it. And the Centurion wasn't surprised about the result, but I have plans for what I'm going to do with the Centurion that I previously took apart. So stay tuned for that. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, want to make suggestions for future episodes, this is the final episode of this season. There will be a special episode, and then I will start getting into more stuff. I've got lots of stuff lined up. I've got another bow episode, vintage episode, revolver episodes, all sorts of stuff planned. So if there's anything that you particularly want to see, go ahead and put it in the comments below. And as always, thank you for watching.